guys, so today I wanted to do a letter with me. I have an extra page between my weekly from week 20, I believe, or my last set of dailies from week 20 and my weekly from week 21. And I decided that I wanted to use this page to do a little bit of lettering. So what I thought I would do is kind of show you my process start to finish. I did already pick out the quote that I want to do. And this is basically, this is my system. So I will oftentimes pick a quote and then I will sort of very messily lay it out in, this is my Bujo R&D notebook, or I'll do it on a scratch piece of paper depending on where I'm doing it. But I'll kind of try and get sort of a global image of how I want the quote to look ultimately. So you'll see here I actually even did testing for colors. So I decided I wanted to do words that are accented in this purple, which is 623, and I might do shading, which I believe this is the N95, but you can see he's well loved. The numbers have worn off. And I wanted to do some of the other words in this purple Pentel Touch sign pen. So the way that this works is I basically took the quote and I decided what I wanted on each page and in each part. So I think that I'm actually going to have a bit of white space here, and I haven't decided if I want to stamp or do washi or watercolor, so that might not happen on camera, but I will at least show you how I set up my lettering. So I'm gonna move this off camera, but so I have that as a reference. So what I did do first is I laid out some marks on here in pencil. I don't know how easily you'll be able to see that, but basically what I decided is I wanted to skip 2 lines at the top, so I have a little bit of space, and I want to do spring, so the first word of the quote in Tombow, so I want to give myself a lot of space for that. I'm going to do the bulk of the quote in Pentel sign pen, so is the time of, and I had is the time of is how I kind of had it spread out, and the last line I want to do in both. So I'll do the 2 main words in Tombow and then the and in the sign pen. And then I do the attribution at the bottom, that's kind of done at the end. So when I go ahead and I start doing something like this, first thing I get is my piece of scratch paper because I am left-handed and I don't want to smudge my hopefully beautiful quote. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn my notebook a little bit. So one thing you might notice when I do quotes like this, depending on what the capital letter looks like, I actually don't always capitalize when I'm doing a quote. Just sometimes I don't like the look of the capital letter, so I'll just go ahead and do it lowercase because that's sort of the effect that I'm going for. And I believe that might be what I do today. And actually, you know what I'm gonna do? So sometimes I'll do this if I'm not sure what style, I will try a couple. And I think that I'm actually gonna do this style for today, just for fun. So, let's see if I can get this on camera, but so I can still write. Okay, so, and you'll see, so I do a little bit, especially with the Tombows, I sometimes will do sort of bouncy lettering, and mine tends to not be like super dramatic, but I've basically kept to my spacing, and I like to leave a couple of lines there so that, for example, I had the G that went a little bit lower. It's not going to squish the other words. So we're gonna let him dry and go to the next bit. do the crease on this side. Hands are a bit shaky today, so that is definitely going to affect. So I fill in if my pen has skipped anywhere, which definitely happens sometimes. And you'll notice that as I write, especially since I'm using a finer pen, the words took up less space than I thought they would, so I just scooched it over. So I'll just do of on the next page because I don't want to squish that. Okay, so that is the next bit. And you'll see I even did smudge a little bit on the eye, but it's the way it goes. And my last bit. So I do have to move the paper as I'm working just so I can see where my lines are, but it's not too bad. Okay, so that is the main lettering. So what I'm going to do now is go back in and shade. I like to use the lightest gray Tombow for this, just so it's kind of a little subtle shading, especially in my bullet journal, since I've got things on the pages around my lettering. I try not to pick anything that's going to bleed through or show through too much on the other side, but it also means that it's a little harder to see the shading, so you just get like a subtle effect of it. Okay, and start with this one. And I like to let the inks dry as much as I can. It's not as noticeable with something like this light purple that I used, but if I use darker, more pigmented colors, it will pick up when I shade, and so I have to be careful because it'll change the color of gray. So a lot of times I'll use my little scratch paper to clean off the nibs so that I don't keep like transferring the base color, if that makes sense. So there. And this guy. And like I said, my hands are a little bit shaky today, so some of my upstrokes are not as thin as they should be, but you know, this is practice. That's why I like to do it in here, so that if I ever want to do a nicer looking lettering, a print or whatever for friends, this is kind of how I practice to get better over time, because if it's just for me, it doesn't really matter if it's a little bit messy. This is also how I practice new styles, or you know, new sort of effects with lettering, what have you. It's one of the reasons why I like doing lettered pages in here. So that is the basic quote. What I am gonna do is do my attribution, and I think that I'm going to do Anna Karenina and Leo Tolstoy like this, and I'm gonna do it in the purple, but use the bullet tip of the pen. So. And you will see that I even managed to mess up. I got ahead of myself, and that is why we have whiteout. So I'm just going to white out my mistake, hopefully. So for littler mistakes, sometimes I'll use a white gel pen, but for something like that, the white gel pen doesn't always cover as much. So, let's see if I can get that. There we go. So I like having a whiteout pen like this for sort of detail work, and then I have a tape one if I have to white out like a whole line, which happens. So yeah, the last thing that I do is erase. Okay, and that is the finished product. So like I said, I knew I was gonna have some white space on here, but I actually have less than I thought I would. And I think I'm just gonna leave that blank for now because I don't really know what I wanna put in there. But, so this is something, let's see, do I have any other lettered pages in here? So in here, so when I do lettering in my bullet journal, a lot of times it's not as fancy. I tend to leave more blank space just because what I really am practicing is lettering and spacing because I find that the more I play around with stuff like this, the better I get at spacing in general. And as you've probably noticed, I don't plan everything out perfectly. I just kind of wing it. And I actually really do, I tend to center everything on the left because that way it's kind of my look at this point, but it's also for easier spacing. So then I just have to worry about the words on the actual line and not so much about making everything perfectly centered, especially if I'm working on a full spread like this where I have the spine of the notebook in the middle. It gets really difficult if you have a word that splits the spine. So the way I do it like this, it allows me to make the most of the space and not have to worry too much about perfect spacing and whatnot. But yeah, so that was just a quick little lettering in my bullet journal. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down below. If you like this video, think about giving it a thumbs up or subscribing to my channel. I try and post videos once a week, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.